Hello there everyone, Inky Fingers here, and this is Inky Fingers Architectural Art. In today's painting I'm going to paint this scene, a lovely Yorkshire scene, Harrogate. Now I love these typical Yorkshire type of scenes. They look so rural, and of Yorkshire, it's a very green county, so we've got to have some nice greenery in the picture. Another thing I like about Yorkshire is that you've got the good old Yorkshire stone. It's all warm, earthy colours. Yellow ochres, raw siennas, touch of burnt siennas here and there, and of course your lovely red tile roofs. So you can get quite a minimum colour picture here, so we can get some nice colour harmony going. But I'm going to paint this slightly different than I usually do, like a pen and wash. Is that two ways you can do pen and washes. The first is you get your pen and you draw in all of the scene with the pen, and then you get the paint on and colour it in. Now that works wonderful, but it does tend to be more like akin to a colouring in book. For example, you will colour in between the lines of the church, you will colour in between the lines of this house, you will colour in between the lines of the roofs. Very neat and tidy, very technical. But the other way to do it, and the way I'm going to do it today, is that you draw it out, which I've done with pencil. So you paint it in without the pen, and then when it's all done, you get your pen and then you go over it to define the actual watercolour you've just done. But when you do it this way, you can be as free as you like. You can be as sketchy as you like. You may, in fact, draw over the watercolour washes, so it can be really, really organic. So that's what I'm going to do. That's how I'm going to paint it. So let's get started. Now, one thing I will say before I start this, I've protected the outline of the buildings using masking fluid. So when I paint the sky in, I don't have to worry about getting paint everywhere where I don't want it. And for the sky itself, I'm going to do a mix of ultramarine blue and a touch of crimson alizarin, just to get that sort of blueness out of it. And for some clouds, or the bottoms of some clouds, I'm going to put in some ultramarine blue and a touch of light red. And then before I put it on the paper, I'm going to wet the sky off. So I'll do this a bit wet and wet, just so everything blends in lovely and we get nice soft fuzzy edges. Now this is just a sheet of Bockingford, nothing special. We'll stick some blue sky in here. Now, as ever, I'm going to paint the blue sky, but I'm going to be looking at the areas I'm leaving. I'm actually painting the clouds in. Negative painting. I'm painting the blue, but I'm actually looking at the shapes of the bits I'm not painting. We'll have a little bit of cloud there. We leave this cloud going down here, and see, we can go over this because it's got masking fluid on, and we'll have a little bit of blue like so. And that's a nice, it looks more like a spring type sky. Because we've got wetted the area, the desk is on just a very slight angle. So gravity is going to pull all this down a little bit. I will go into this darker paint and I will just tap in a little bit of this paint. Just a little bit under there. Just underneath the clouds. That's it. Leave it. I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to push it around because I'm not going to push the paint around because that's going to spoil it. So it's still wet. It's still moving. It's still organic. So just let it do what it wants to do. So I've let this dry. The sky now looks quite nice. The clouds are nice and fluffy. And because we've just left it, we haven't pushed it around or anything. It looks like we've got a drop of rain coming down here, but it looks quite nice. So the next thing to do, before I take the masking fluid off, of course, is that there are some background trees just in this area. So for the trees, it's only a small area. It's not a rough paper, so it doesn't have that much grain. So dry brush is going to be a little bit more difficult to do on this. So I'm going to use this small number 2 Kolinsky Sable rigger. The thing is, it's just it's a natural hair rigger. Natural hair always dry brushes far better on paper than like nylon. And I'm just going to use, this is where the sky color was in this palette here, and I've just put a little bit of green. It's actually jade green, but you know, any green could do, and just a speck of yellow ochre just to sort of brighten it up. But it is sort of more of a dull green because I want this kept a bit more in the background. Now take some of this paint off the brush, and then the tree is just going to be around this house here. So keeping the brush sort of flat like so. So you're going to scrape it across the grain of the paper, and hopefully we can get a nice bit of dry brush with gaps in between the foliage, of course, so the birds can fly through. So gently does it. Right over the roof, because masking fluid's still on, so it's well protected. And I'm just going to put a little bit more blue into that, so it's much bluer. And I'm just going to put some of this foliage down here, much more blue, so it sort of pushes this bit back into the distance because we've added blue to it. And I just put all that sort of all down there. And you know what, why not? There is a touch of foliage across down here, so let's just put a little bit of foliage just down there, nestle in between the church, just like that. And then once again, let that dry. So we're all dry again. So now the fun part when you're taking masking fluid off is taking the masking fluid off and revealing all of this lovely white sharp edges. Always pull away, downwards, away from the edge. Just be gentle so we don't rip the paper. And there we go, we've got a nice sharp clean outline. So now it's all off, the masking fluid is off. I shall start painting some chimney pots and a few roofs, I think. Now we can see the roofs. If you look at the picture, the roofs are sort of a nice sort of brick red tile colour, and we've got some sort of dirty brick chimney pots. So for the chimney pots, all I'm going to use is some bog standard burnt sienna, because that's a lovely sort of brick colour anyway, but it's a little bit too bright. So we can knock that down by just adding some blue. Now to keep this colour harmony going, I've got the blue here. This is the sky colour, the cloud colour. So I just have to take a little bit of this, put it into there, and we can see just now how that's gone a very nice dirty old brick colour, which is perfect. Still using the little brush, I'm just going to paint in this chimney pot. And then just put these other roofs in, just adjusting the colour slightly for this one. And then the other roofs, they are more of a light red. So I put light red into this receptacle. You can see it's a much different colour than burnt sienna, but it's not the right kind of red. It's a little bit so just to make that a touch better, I will put in just a touch of yellow ochre. You can see how that just lightens it up a little bit, just makes it a bit more pleasant. And then I'll just paint in that roof with that colour, leaving a tiny little gap here to separate that wet roof from that wet roof. And then just modify the colour. I've just put a little bit more yellow ochre in, touch more light red, just to get a sort of reddish tile colour for these are the roofs, which I now have. So this one we'll just put in there. Nice and flat. I don't think this picture is going to have much detail. And now adding a little bit of cadmium red into that picture, into that mix. So when I put this roof in, it's going to be a little bit redder than the roof I've just put in. All different tones, which there pretty much are in the picture. Now, as for brickwork, we have this chimney stack here. Now this has got some nice details in. We can see that there is actually, we can see brickwork, and it's in the foreground, so we will put that brickwork in. So I do always like to have some inexpensive, they're just cheap nylon brushes, but you can see they're flat brushes and they are quite small heads. So one of them is going to be very nice for painting in bricks. We've just got to get the right size, and I think we'll have an experiment on this. So actually we use a different colour, just so it's not brick colour, but we'll just so we can see. So we can have 1 brick, 2 bricks, 3 bricks, so you can have a lovely brush just to make this type of mark, and you can get very easily painted brickworks or bricks. So all we need to do here is carefully paint in some bricks. I'll change the colour slightly. Alright, so our next job is to actually paint in the colours for the actual buildings themselves. And as I said, this is Yorkshire stone, so it's pretty much all the same type of colour. Yes, we do have various colours within the main colour, which I've already got here. And these colours is just simply yellow ochre and some neutral tint. That's going to darken it up. This is a little bit of Naples yellow with a touch of this colour in, which is burnt sienna. We can use some of this colour here. I think maybe we could use a touch of this darker colour, and that's what I'm going to put in these buildings. And how I'll do that is just starting off, we'll start with this yellow ochre. It's a little bit dirty, but that's even better. And so I'll start on this side here. This is the shadow side, by the way. So we'll just put some of this yellow ochre around here. Then I'm going to go into the yellow ochre and neutral tint mix, and I'll just drop that in here and there. So it's not going to be one boring colour. Got to watch this because that's the bridge. Then I think I'll go into some of this brick colour and just drop a little bit of that in here and there. Back into the yellow ochre. I haven't cleaned the brush, so it's still got a little bit of the contaminated brush with the other colours, but that's okay. We'll tell you what, I'm going to go into this colour here, which I did for the sky, and I'm just going to drop this blue in, as it is the shadow side. So we've just got this nice mishmash of colour, which should look quite nice when it's dry. And we can also put another colour over that anyway. Yeah, I'm just going to put a touch more of this blue in there. Drop a touch of water. It's still wet, so it'll still work. These nice little flecks of white paper, I like them. I'm going to leave them. And that's what I'll do for that building there. I'm going to use exactly the same method for the shadow side of this church. So once again, we'll put a little bit of paint on like so. I'll go into this colour, just drop it on, so it's not the same colour all the way down. Now I don't want to do exactly the same what I did there, because that's quite a large area. That's only small, so I don't want to overflow it or over detail this. But I will just touch a little bit of red here and there, and I'll leave that like that. So now all I'm going to do is paint in the faces, the sunlight faces of the buildings. Now we've got a couple of little different colours here. We've got quite a light one, a quite light building here, which this is the Naples yellow, and just a touch of yellow ochre, quite watery, so it is rather light. And then these are the buildings are a little more of the yellow ochre, but I will put a touch of Naples yellow in there still, just to lighten it up. Obviously can't put white in because that's just going to be too much, but Naples yellow is light, it does have white in, so it'll suffice. But they are a little bit more warmer, so I'm going to put a little bit of this brick colour here, which I think that might be just perfect. And these two buildings actually are the same colour. I'm just going to go over the windows so they can come on later because they're dark. And then for the other buildings, as you can see, I've just put more yellow ochre and a touch more Naples yellow into this colour, but I've just darkened it down slightly by using this grey colour. It is a more of a duller greyish yellow. And we'll do the same colour for the sunlit part of the church, which isn't really that bright. It's quite a dark stone church, but I'm just going to pretty much put everything over. I'm not worrying about detail, so I don't want this to be a really detailed picture. It's a little bit too far away, these things, for really putting details in. So I've got all the buildings in. We've got some nice textures around here. The sunlit areas do look sunlit, even though we haven't got anything dark in to make them even lighter. Of course, we haven't got the shadow colours in the shadow areas yet, which is really going to make the thing lift. But we need to before we do that, we need to get rid of all this horrible white here. And of course, all this white really is grass with some daffodils in it. So what I'm going to do is I've mixed some colour here. I've mixed this colour here is Iso Yellow Light. Again, it's just like lemon yellow. And I've mixed in some Jade Green. Now, just as a reminder, this is what Jade Green looks like. It's quite a nice, it's a granulating colour, it's a Jackman's colour. Lovely colour. So that and Iso Yellow Light to make this light green, and this colour here is just Jade Green again, but with ultramarine. So we're using the same colours repeatedly throughout the picture. And for this is just ultramarine on its own. I may just drop some of this ultramarine in the darker areas. I'm not sure yet. We'll see what happens. So starting with the light green around here, because this is where the sunshine is. As you can see, it's very, very sunlit here. So that's where we're going to start. So I'm going to do this rather simplistic. I may just put some Iso Yellow Light directly onto the picture actually to start off with. Just like so. Pull it there, pulling it or painting it this way, either flat because the ground is flat. Don't want to do it up an angle, so make it look like going up a hill. So just pull this across. Then I'm going to go into the slightly darker. I'm just using this number as a number 4 Klinsky Sable Rigger, just so I can try and get some dry brush. Now we can see here, it's quite greasy. Now I've found, if I do find this with Bockingford paper, it can be rather greasy, but I think that's just what Bockingford is. I'm going to go into the darker area now, because we're going to go into this more of a shadow area. Now I can, the angle of the brush stroke is now going like an arc, because we're now going across and down into the little riverbank. So if you do that and we leave some little gaps like that, then we can see the angle of the lay of the land. Drop some there. I might even go into the blue now and just drop some blue into there. Because blue is a shadow colour. And I'll just let it blend in. I won't push it around too much. And we'll just leave that like that. Nice and simple. We do exactly the same with the other side. But I'm going to start here because this is where we do have some sunshine, more sunshine. So I'll just, now I've got masking fluid here. You might be able to see where I want to put some flowers. So I've got the masking fluid there, but I'm just going to dab some of this, a dry brush, along here. I could use a larger brush, but I'm going to go into this darker green now because we are sort of going into we can see several different levels of green, from the light green to a medium green to the dark green, and this is the blue, just the ultramarine blue on its own. Now I will put some darker areas with a shadow colour over this area, or where I need it, later on. But what I'm going to do now, I'm going to put in some windows. So for the windows, I've mixed up some ultramarine blue and a little bit of neutral tint. The easy way of just darkening the blue up to get a nice dark colour. It's not black, it is a very darkish blue. And again, using just a small brush, a rigger, I'm just going to loosely paint in some of these. Now that's the windows put in, very simply. They don't look much now because, as I said, I have to put some window frames in. So I'm going to do this little stream now, and keeping with the colour palette we've already got, I'm just going to use some French ultramarine because that's the colour we have in the sky. And for the darker areas, I'll just drop in some of this, the shadow colour or the dark colour for the windows I've just put in. The brush strokes are going to be from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock or 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock to make sure that it's kept level. All I'm doing now is I'm going to go back to one of these little inexpensive tiny flat brushes, and I'm going to put some detail or some blocks because this part of the bridge is consisted of blocks. So just like the brickwork we did here, I can use the flat edge of the brush, maybe a bit of that way, and just start painting in some blocks of its construction. And it just gives a touch of detail. So now I'm going to put in some shadows. And once I put the shadows in the shadow areas, then I can put another tone, a wash, a glaze on some of these lighter areas like the church, because the church is too light at the moment and I think it needs to be darkened down ever so slightly, and a couple of little hints at details. So the shadow colour for today, I've used some French ultramarine and some light red to give a more of a neutral, cool type of shadow. And as everything on the right hand side is in shadow, I can just apply this on the right hand side. Now what I will do, I think, is just drop a little bit of water here and there, just so it's not a completely flat wash. Give a little bit, as you can see, we've got a little bit of cauliflower in here, a little, just gives a touch of texture. So all the picture's done. We've still got to take the masking fluid off these flowers, but that'll come later. So the shadows are on, so we've got some nice darks, but it is quite bland because I've painted this to put pen on afterwards to define it up. If I wasn't going to put pen on and this was going to be a normal, just a bog standard watercolour, then I would have put a lot more refinement in the washes themselves. But you can't really put definement in the washes and then put a pen on. I think that would be too much. So less on the picture, then you put the pen on to bring it together. And this is just a Unipin fine liner I'm going to try. This is a 0.3. Now, as I said, when you do a picture like this and you put the pen on, you can actually sketch, you can doodle. And now I'm not really looking at the picture now. I'm just going to do what I think it needs. And you can see I'm holding the pen sort of halfway nearly, so I'm having a loose feel. And in doing it like this enables it to be quite sketchy and loose. Now, of course, you could use a smaller pen if need be, but as long as you do it nice and lightly, it should be okay. I'm just enhancing these shadow colours a bit. This is just ultramarine blue on its own. I think this has got a bit of a shadow around here. And just a little bit here. It's just very weak raw sienna. Just a little bit of paint on these buildings. Just touch of texture because they are stone, so they will have a little bit of something on them. So now I've taken the masking fluid off these flowers. Now they were daffodils, but I've decided I don't want them daffodils anymore. Because we've got red or green, I'm going to make them into some nice poppies. So we do have some nice vibrant reds here. Mainly Pyrrole Red, Daniel Smith Pyrrole Red, and a cadmium red medium. So just a mixture of these two colours, and I'll just haphazardly put this colour on these flowers. And that's it. That's the picture finished. Just a good old rustic type of scene. Very limited colours to give that rustic type of look. Now we can see how I've done the pen work on the church. It's not too much. I haven't put really too much detail in because obviously it's in the background. In fact, there's hardly any pen work there when you think of it. But it's just one of those subject matter that doesn't really need a lot of pen. But because I've added the pen at the end, I have been a lot more scratchy and a lot more loose with it. So you get this nice freeness, this organic sort of looking area around the church, for example. You can go overboard with the pen, just filling in the areas you want. Do some areas more heavier, do some areas lighter, a lighter touch. So you can vary the line and get some more interest within the picture. The overall picture itself, we've got some nice shadow areas. We've got a lot of jumble of green, very complicated scene in the foreground in the picture. As these originally were daffodils, they've got the sort of the stalks, the leaves, and everything what daffodils have, which you couldn't actually put that into the area. It would be too complicated. So I changed it into poppies, red and green, complementary colours. I splattered some white ink just to give some more extra little flowers there, and I've done a lot of splattering and some paint, other green, dark green paint in the grass itself, and then just pulled it out with a little bit of water, just so it looks quite complicated, but it isn't. It's very, very simplistic and quite quick to do. And for the buildings, yes, they are stone, but in the shadows, I have got some sort of, it's not detail at all. It's just different bits of tone. Put in wet and wet, pulled around with a little bit of water, so we get these darker markings, which could be the essence of stonework. And a touch of detailing, if you can call it that. It's just a bit of paint put over the front, pulled it with a bit of water, maybe it's a touch of splattering here and there, very, very minor, just to give a touch of texture in the facer of the buildings. And of course, you can't do anything on these buildings because they are too far away. So it's just a simple little rustic picture. So why don't you give this a go? Paint the picture first, then be really free as you like, and draw the outlines in afterwards. The outline will be put on my community page on the YouTube channel, so you can print it out, trace it if you need to, and give it a go yourself. It's not that difficult. So until next time, I'll see you then, so goodbye.